Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all for tuning in to this Remote-a-thon series event hosted by Guru. Guru is a collaborative knowledge management solution, and in this series, we're really excited to be featuring amazing leaders across customer experience, sales enablement, and knowledge management. Today, we're absolutely thrilled and so grateful to be hosting Ali Berman from a company that I'm sure most of you know very well and love, Slack. Ali is a forward-thinking, innovative, and empathetic leader and a great friend of Guru's, and she has some really valuable perspective to share today. I'm personally super excited to be getting a behind-the-scenes view of how Ali and her team have been able to maintain such a phenomenal customer experience as Slack continues to grow like crazy. So to give a sense for what to expect in this session, we'll discuss how Ali and her team have approached growth, looking specifically at product launches. Ali will take us through some of the challenges she and the CX team faced, and then she'll share how they approached solving those challenges with a bit of show and tell as a little treat towards the end. And then we'll close the session with plenty of time for Q&A. So with that, I'll briefly introduce myself and then turn it over to the real star of the show, Ali. My name's Elizabeth Powell. I'm originally from Atlanta, which is actually where I am now with my parents. And after one too many Northeast winters, I made the trek out west to San Francisco. I've been at Guru for about a year now, and I'm a senior manager on our product marketing team, focused specifically on creating the best possible product and experience for our customer support and customer success teams. I'm thrilled to be joined here today by Ali, and I'm so looking forward to diving into how we can use process and automation to empower our support teams. So I will now turn it over to you, Ali, to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your team at Slack.
I'm Ali Berman. And I wanted to thank Elizabeth and Guru for having me today, and for all of you for joining to listen to me talk about this stuff. A bit of background on me: I'm on the customer experience operations team at Slack, and I've been there for 4.5 years. My role in particular focuses on learning tooling and our internal documentation. I live in San Francisco with my 2 kids, and I'm originally from Ohio. Go Bucks. And I have a bit of a winding road to knowledge management. I worked in the music industry for many years, had a kind of transition role doing customer support and client services at Ticketfly, the ticketing company. I then moved to Twitter for a couple of years, was a stay-at-home mom for 3 years, and then I landed at Slack. So some background on customer experience. We say customer experience, CX, whatever. This is what we call it. We're about 250 team members worldwide. We have 6 regional offices as well as some remote people, although we're all remote right now. We've grown a ton since I started back in 2016. At the time I started, I think we're about 70 people worldwide. We're made up of 4 pillars. The core services and admin services pillar are our customer-facing agents, so email support, live support, our international support team. CE products builds our customer-facing tools, so our help center, any kind of user education tools, and our localization team is also part of products, and then operations, which is the team that I'm on. So a little bit about CE operations. We're responsible for supporting the entire CE organization, so core and admin services and products pillars, as well as ourselves, I guess. And we're made up of 3 sub-teams. So we have technical operations, learning and analytics, which is the team that I'm on, and then we have a dedicated engineering team as well. So some context for what CE operations does. We build team processes, maintain tools and systems, provide analytics to the team. We do all the onboarding, and then learning. So learning is my focus, and that includes tooling specifically related to learning and onboarding, and then developing and overseeing our internal documentation knowledge base, which happens to be in Guru.
Thank you so much for this introduction, Ali. We're going to have to do another session on your prior life in the music industry. It's incredible how quickly y'all have grown over the past few years. And I really can't wait to dig into how your team in particular has approached scaling without necessarily hiring a bunch of people. I think this will be extremely valuable for everyone tuning in who wants to improve their internal efficiency and customer experience, and especially for high growth companies. So thank you again. I'm super excited for this conversation. To get us started, I'd love to hear more about your experience growing your team. How have you been able to scale your impact, and what challenges have come with growth?
Yeah, so we are committed to scaling ourselves and our work as far as we possibly can. And we do this by developing processes and heavily relying on automations and workflows where they're appropriate in our work. We often ask, does somebody actually have to do this work manually, or can we leverage technology to free up our time and our brain power to work on more complex things? A specific challenge and one example of this work that I've recently tackled is facilitating more awareness of our product changes and releases and allowing us to be prepared for those. Basically anything that affects our customers that they might need to contact us for. So as CE has grown, Slack has grown. And with the increased headcount also comes an increase in the output of our features and our bug fixes, which is a good thing for our customers. But when we were a smaller company, it wasn't out of the ordinary for an engineering manager or a product manager to have a relationship with somebody in CE that they'd give a heads up to on an upcoming feature release. We in ops would often find things in Jira and then follow up with engineering on those. And then we would also monitor creation of a new features channel. Every time there's a new feature channel spun up, we actually have a channel in Slack that tells you that the new feature channel was created. But this informal process of popping into a channel a few days before or the day of the launch or DMing people privately was very haphazard, and it didn't take into account all the parts of CE work that are touched by a feature release. And asking the ops team to track down the information just wasn't scalable. So as our team grew, so did the complexity of our work. And we also became more specialized, and we don't have as much bandwidth to know exactly what the other teams within CE are working on, how they're doing their work, and then how our work might impact their work. We're all connected, but we also don't know what we don't know. So it's super important that we recognize that the work that we're doing might affect our teammates and to understand our role in the larger ecosystem of our department. It was also important that product and engineering understood the impact that a small change could have on our team. So for example, we changed the terminology from teams to workspaces, and that created like a ton of, a ripple effect of a ton of work for us, just that one small terminology change. So some of the pain points in the way that we were going about doing things, we were finding out about feature releases in the channels on the day they were released. So we had no time to prep comms or prep our help center, give a heads up to agents, have staffing in place, put processes in place, things like that. Product and engineering also relied heavily on the people that they were already familiar with communicating changes to, even if those weren't the people that were the directly responsible individuals for the product area within CE. So for example, our help center team became a de facto place for PMs to go, even though help center is just like one part of all the work that needs to be done. Our DRI managers were being cut out of the communication process. That product and engineering be aware, the agents might like see something in a channel, but the managers wouldn't have insight into what ticket volume might be or what their agents should be expecting. And we'd also find ourselves scrambling at the last minute to put enablement materials together and to make sure our content, our help center content was localized to support our global customers.
Allie, thank you for sharing all of this. Obviously, product launches are so core to customer satisfaction, and yet they can make the job of CX really tough. The challenges you mentioned highlight, I think, also just how cross-functional CX really is and how difficult that becomes as your company scales if you don't have the right tools and processes in place. I want to pause now and turn to the audience with a quick poll, and you can pick all that apply. So which challenges does your team face around product launches? And let me launch the poll. All right, give it just a minute or so. Okay, so it looks like 67%, 2/3 of the respondents said that missing or finding out about releases last minute is one of the biggest challenges that they face. Half of y'all said no official enablement process or ownership is a challenge. And then 42% said no centralized place to see all upcoming releases, and then also inadequate communication with product and engineering poses a challenge for product launches. And then 1/3 of y'all thought methods of discovery are manual or not scalable poses a challenge. And I think this is so indicative of how complicated product launches can be, and all of these different facets of the challenges, all of which you, Allie, referenced as being problematic for your team. Okay. So those were the results. Okay. So it sounds like your work was really cut out for you, Allie, when it came to product changes as the company grew, especially when you're so dependent on cross-functional teams. How did you go about solving these challenges to set your team up for success, and what did you ultimately build?
Yeah, so when we decided to approach this, the question that we kind of posed to ourselves at the very beginning was, how do we maintain open and proactive communication with the product and engineering teams and make it easy for them to inform us of upcoming changes? This would both benefit us because we'd have awareness, but it would also give them a single destination that they knew where to go to let the CE team know about it, instead of having to have the mental overhead and the legwork of like tracking the right people down. So when you're rolling out a process that requires that cross-team collaboration, there has to be something in it for them too. And it's important to communicate that with the people that you're trying to get help and information from, so that there is buy-in for the process that you're implementing. So we decided that we needed to create a formalized workflow for intake of upcoming product changes. Using the tools and the skills that we had, we wanted to build something scalable and that empowered the team with knowledge. That's the next slide. Yeah. So it was important that we set the goals, like we began with the goals, not the solution. We wanted to create a source of truth about product changes and about who owns which pieces of the enablement process within CE. We needed to create those enablement resources to standardize the way that we were doing our work. We wanted to automate personalized communication to the teams within CE for the releases that affected their work, and build feedback cycles with product and engineering around missing information that may lead us to being underprepared to support our customers. So this is an overview of what we built. First, we identified changes that have customer impact by checking in with our cross-functional partners, like those on the product management team. We also run a weekly reconciliation against JIRA for things that have not yet gone through our intake process. Once we identify these, typically someone in CE goes to the channel and submits them using a workflow intake bot. Product managers and engineers have also kind of started coming to the channel and doing that as well, which is really great. Once the intake is submitted, we size based on criteria that takes into account how much work is required on the CE side to support the change or the release. And we also create a supporting document in Guru for the release, so that there's one place for the team to reference for information and FAQs. The CE DRI managers, and again, DRI, if people don't know the acronym, is directly responsible individual. They are tagged in the intake process based on what product area that they're the DRI for, and then they assign somebody on their team to run the applicable runbook. All during this, we're sending out weekly alerts that take the data that's input into the enablement tracker, and then we send out customized alerts to the team channels. And throughout, we're always monitoring how the process is working and refining based on feedback that we get both from CE and from product and engineering. And then we also surface releases that were missed to product engineering so that they can make adjustments to their workflows as well. So the next slide is an animated GIF demo. This is in our demo channel, so obviously like not the actual channel that we have in Slack, but going back to the goals for the workflow, we wanted to establish the source of truth. So we built an intake bot and a dedicated channel so that everyone knows where to go to alert the CE team to upcoming changes. So if you go into the channel and you click the button to launch the workflow, a dialog box comes up and has a bunch of different categories that you need to like put the information into, like the product area, the date it's going out, what channels engineering is discussing the feature release in, and then any context in product and engineering. Once it's submitted, it starts a thread in the same channel, and it actually pings me. So right now we kind of have a single source of failure, but it'll ping me, and then I do the sizing. I assign it to the appropriate CEDRI. Then I will create the supporting doc. I add the link to the supporting doc, and then the CEDRI selects somebody on their team that's going to run the whole process on their end. Once all of those different tasks are done, it'll spit out a summary of everything that was input, and then it also links to our enablement materials and runbooks, and then it also links to the tracker. So you can see, like, if you're like, I don't know where to go to see everything that's coming out, you know, you can kind of go to this channel and pick any of these. This is a screenshot of the demo channel, but this is exactly what it looks like in the actual production channel. So people know that they can go to this channel to see everything that's actually been through the intake process, and they can search that channel. They can know that they can go there to find, like, where's the link to the supporting doc and things like that. And then we also have the dashboard that shows all the changes that we're aware of that are coming out in the next, we do like 14 days and 30 days and 60 days. We also do show on the same dashboard things that are in JIRA but have not yet been through the intake process. So the next part of our goal, oh, go on back.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. The next part of our goal is to create enablement resources. So we have a board in Guru that has all of the enablement resources on it. And we made runbooks for each size launch, and also our sizing matrix that just guides us into figuring out, like, what size should we make this in order to run the correct runbook. So with automating alerts, our enablement tracker feeds into the automated alerts that go to the channel. And this is customizable both in the content that is in the alerts and the cadence in which it's sent to channel. So if you're on live support, you probably want to know about everything that's going to be released, because there's a good chance you're going to get a chat about it. But if you're in core product, you only want to see the things that are applicable to your particular product area. And this also includes, these alerts also include the things that we are aware of, like the upcoming launch alerts, but we also send out alerts every week that note the things that haven't yet been through intake, and then they're tied to tag the CEDRI that's responsible for that product area to kind of nudge them to get those through the intake. We also wanted to build feedback cycles. So having this enablement workflow and the resources has allowed us to identify the gaps in the resources that we're getting from product and engineering, and has also allowed us to provide more data-driven feedback on the release cycles. It lets us coordinate with product and eng on how many releases we have on a given day or a given week, and how that would impact our work and our ticket volume. And then having the dedicated feedback channel gives us the ability to collect feedback on the process to make it run more smoothly for everyone. But it keeps noise out of that main intake channel. So if people, like, for example, in the screenshot, like Olivia is on our help center team, and she, you know, had a suggestion for how we were running things, and so she can go to the feedback channel and provide that, and then we'll take action on it.
Wow, Allie, this is so cool. I know that our customer support manager, June, is just salivating right now. Product changes and launches are such a critical part of growth, and yet they can be really tough to execute smoothly, particularly from a CX perspective. I think it's really brilliant how you and your team figured out how to leverage automation and process to set each team member up for success, particularly in such a fast-paced environment and with so many stakeholders and moving pieces. We talked about the challenges y'all faced that led to the solution you built, but I'm curious to learn more about how you were able to roll this out and what results you've actually seen since implementing. Before we do, though, I want to turn to the audience again for a quick poll. So what would be your biggest obstacles to rolling out a new process like this? And give it just a minute. Okay, we have almost everyone in. Give it another couple of seconds. All right, so it's so interesting. No one said buy-in from CX team would be a challenge to rolling out a new process like this. It seems like CX could really see the value, but 64% of y'all said that buy-in from cross-functional partners would be a challenge. Allie, I am so excited to hear kind of how you tackle this type of thing. 45% of y'all said lack of resources and not enough time to invest up front would be challenges to rolling out a process like this. And then 27% of y'all said not knowing where to start. Allie, is any of this surprising to you? Is this kind of what you expected?
Yeah, I think, yes, it goes kind of with what I would anticipate. Although the 0% buy-in for CX team is a nice surprise.
Well, I'd love to hear, Allie, what it was like for you and your teams at Slack. What, I'm gonna stop sharing this, close out. What were the biggest challenges you faced in rolling things out, and what were the results you saw once you did implement this new process?
Yeah, so some of the challenges that we faced with building and implementing this were no one on our team had ever built something like this before. So there was a very big learning curve and a lot of uncertainty. While we did pilot the workflow with a smaller team within CE services, we were working with data in real time to test it out, which always has risks. We had to meet with a ton of different teams within CE and with our product managers to educate them on how this would work. So that took up a lot of our time, a lot of presentations on like, this is the process and this is what we need you to do. And then we were missing use cases that weren't apparent until we actually launched. And so then we had to go back and adjust. However, this has been a very successful implementation on our team. The managers feel more in the loop because they have a more holistic view of what changes might affect their teams. Having a standard process for releases allows our agents to be prepared and to deliver the level of customer support that we are expected to give from our customers. And the word of this workflow process has made its way to other departments who are keen to develop something similar. I think oftentimes it can feel like CX work is very reactionary or it's coming from the top down, but we've been able to establish efficiencies that have been adopted company-wide on several occasions. And that feels really good because you feel like you're contributing to the rest of the company.
That's so awesome.
So some of the next steps with this, we're going to continue to iterate on the actual workflow. And we're working to get it fully into maintenance mode and remove ourselves, and by ourselves, I mean me, from the active process. And get to a place where we're just maintaining and iterating and taking feedback in, but not having us be actively involved in sizing and assigning and things like that. So we're kind of brainstorming ways that we can move some of that work out and distribute it on the team. We're going to continue to share our findings with other teams. And then we're broadening the definition of what a release is within CE to include deprecations, if product marketing email campaigns go out, just really figuring out like what are the ways in which we're touching the customer and like when they might might want to contact us, and then are we prepared enough to be able to answer their questions. So just to recap, and if you take anything away from what I've talked about today, I would hope it would be these three things. So when you're faced with scaling a smaller team, which I think customer experience in general faces some headcount challenges, and then especially if you're having like an operations team on CX, because that's really kind of behind the scenes work. The number one bit of advice I can give is to identify the areas that you're doing manual work where manual work does not need to be done. And if that work does require a person, you can find areas in which some of the work can be automated. Approaching the work from a mindset of how does what I'm building incentivize partners or end users to get on board, like what's in it for them. This will be helpful in selling them on it. If you build a process but nobody uses it because they don't understand why they're supposed to be using it, then it doesn't really help you out. And then think about what skill sets you have and what skill sets you might be able to borrow from some upfront investment from other teams. There's so much tooling out there that you can learn about and use, and it does require more time and energy at the beginning, but in the long run, it'll free your time up to do other important work.
Allie, wow, thank you. I know I speak for everyone watching this, that was incredibly instructive and inspiring. I have a feeling that you're going to be having a lot of people knocking on your virtual door to learn more about how to do this on their own teams. It was so helpful hearing your strategic approach and goals for the initiative, and I loved seeing what you actually built. I also think it's tremendous the impact you've been able to have driving efficiencies across the company, delivering a better customer experience, and really setting a model for other departments. I love that. So thank you so much for sharing all of this. With the time remaining, I want to now open things up to the audience for some Q&A. So I'll switch over and take a look at the questions that have been coming in via the chat. Thank you all. Okay, so we have one question from Katrina. What tool are you integrated with to automate resource assignments based on the scoping fed through Slack?
Yeah, so I think what you're asking is like, what tool is actually like going through, like that we're like pushing the buttons. I just want to make sure that that's like the tool that you're talking about, but that's just Workflow Builder. So we just built our own like custom workflow in Slack itself.
Cool. And then we have another question. Where do you think you could still improve it, or what was the most impactful improvement you've made from feedback? That's a great question.
Yeah, so I think like I mentioned in the next steps, I think the one way we can improve it is to remove us from it, because like having me be the person that it's just never a good idea to have one person that is kind of the person that kicks off everything. So while I enjoy doing it and I understand the system the most out of everybody that's using it, I really think I just need to like educate the rest of the team on how it's used so that anybody can go in and submit these, and that we're just doing kind of like the back end work. It's probably the number one improvement we could make. The process itself is pretty, even though I guess it looks kind of complicated, but it is pretty simple from an end user perspective. And the other question was, what's the most impactful improvement we've made from feedback? Trying to think. They're all been like, yeah, I don't, yeah, I'm like, what is the most impactful improvement? I think we've had things that have made it run more smoothly. Like we realized that like we had a Jira key. This was like the feedback from the Help Center team. Like there's a Jira key that the Help Center team uses for their improvements. And then there's a Jira key that like the engineering team uses for their improvements. And sometimes those were getting like, people were just like, I'm just going to put the Jira in. So like, I think adding like hints or like, this is what we mean by this, which is really hard when you're building like a workflow in like a form that has limited characters. So I think maybe just having people use it and seeing where they were confused and then trying to add little hints for clarification, like helped make people use it a little more smoothly and understand what we were asking for.
Amazing. All right, we have another question. Aside from explaining the why to other teams and the value of the system, how did you encourage buy-in from the product and engineering teams?
We basically sold them on like, Slack is known for excellent customer support. And we cannot do that if we do not know what's coming out. And amazingly, that like actually is a really good selling point to them. I mean, I think like our engineers and our product managers and like everybody that works at Slack like really cares about our customers. It's probably why our customers have pretty good satisfaction with us. And it's because it's not just like customer experience. It's like, we got to do this for our customers. It really is like the whole company that is very customer centric. So tapping into that allowed us to be like, hey, we're going to have you do this process, but the end goal is that we're prepared to support our customers. I think the other thing is that it really did lighten the load on their mental overhead, where they're just like, oh, we just go to this channel. We just always go to this channel. Even if I don't know if I'm supposed to put something in here, I know I can go to the channel and ask. And so that was a big selling point for them as well.
Amazing. All right, we have another one. Is there any acknowledgement from CE team members to make sure they understand the details of a new release? Or is it their responsibility to use the resources available to educate themselves?
Yeah, so the way that we do releases, we have like a point of contact within CE that runs the runbook. And part of doing that runbook is going into the feature channel, asking questions, taking the materials that they provide us and interpreting those both for CE agents to use and then for our customers. So there is a person that's kind of the liaison between customer experience and engineering that is asking those questions to make sure that we understand. And oftentimes, like, we ask those questions and it allows the engineers or the product managers to be like, oh yeah, that is confusing. Like, even when we are pre-release and kind of giving that feedback. So it's kind of a nice side effect that we can say, like, this is going to be, like, I'm confused by this. This might be confusing for the customers.
Got it. All right, we have one more, unless anyone else has some last minute questions. But you mentioned that this automated process has saved your team time. What has this enabled you and your team to focus on with that time saved?
Yeah, so this is like coincidental that my project that I'm working on right now is Guru, but because we've like freed up specifically like my time now that this is kind of running on its own. I mean, I do pop in to do the sizing and stuff, but that takes like 2 minutes. We're doing a complete audit of all our Guru resources and not really a restructuring of our information architecture, but just making sure it works for the team size that we are at, and making sure the way that we are doing things, like anybody in customer experience can be an author in our Guru collection. And we started that 2 years ago. We're like much bigger than we were 2 years ago. So just evaluating if that still works for us, digging into data. Like, I'm not a data person, and but I'm on the learning and analytics team. And a lot of our decisions, that we need to make and things that we want to sell to our senior management, like, are much easier to sell if we have data to support them. So I've personally been spending a ton of time like learning how to do data analysis, which is not something I ever thought I would ever do in my career or in my life. But it's quite interesting. So, and that requires way more mental overhead for me because
Yep.
I don't know anything about it. So things like that, I have the time to spend a little extra time to learn how to do those things.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are about at time. Thank you all for your engagement. I'll cover a couple last things to wrap up, and then we'll let everyone get on with their days. Join the Guru community. There's a number of different ways that you can get involved. You can join our Slack community, where folks like Allie are active in sharing knowledge and building relationships. You can also check out our upcoming webinars and events. And then importantly, if you liked what you heard in this conversation, we have 2 other sessions available on demand in our CX track. One is with Jordan Pedraza from Handshake and talks all about building a 21st century customer experience team with some amazing actionable tips. And then the other one is with Brooke Wayne from FreshBooks. That's all about carving out a unique career path within support. It's super valuable both for folks early on in their careers as well as for managers and leaders on how to best empower their team members. So be sure to check those out. And then, yeah, we just want to hear from you and continue conversations like the one we had today. So please do get involved and reach out. And that's a wrap for today's Remote-a-thon session. Allie, thank you again for your amazing contribution. It has truly been such a privilege to get to learn from you and what you've built. And to all those tuning in, thank you. I hope you're leading the session with inspiration and ideas for how you can improve your own teams and ultimately deliver the best possible customer experience.
Thanks, everyone.